Because when I think of jump scares, I think of the Maze Game.
What is that?
Oh my God. How do you not know the Maze Game? Hold on. Let me make sure that I'm saying this right.
Are you covering that so you don't see the scary images?
I can't.
He was looking up something on his iPad, and then he had to cover it with his hands so he didn't see how scary it was.
I hate it. I can't. It's
embarrassing.
Hello and welcome to Given the Platform, the show where we give unsung people the chance to flaunt their extraordinary passions and knowledge. As always, if you'd like to be on the show, please contact me at giventheplatform@gmail.com. Also, make sure to give us a download on your favorite podcasting platform and rate us 5 stars on iTunes if you'd like. It's really going to help me get this podcast out. You can also follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Given the Platform and on Twitter at Give the Platform. I'm particularly excited about this week and next week's podcast. They're thematically based around Halloween. We have horror movies this week and Twilight next week. And editing these podcasts have been a blast. Both guests are so funny, so amazing. And I hope you have as much fun listening to these episodes as I did editing them. Enjoy. Today, we have on Joey Cooper. Joey Cooper is a colleague, a peer, a friend, and he's here to talk about something that I have many points of contention with, but it is among the staples of the season. It is horror movies. Joey Cooper has an expansive knowledge of horror movies. He's a big fan.
Well,
he brought notes. He's pretty good.
I did bring notes. I did.
So we just came from a 2-hour viewing of The Thing. It was great. I had never seen it before. I know of the new version, but that one, according to you, and I do believe you, is better.
Yes.
But let's start with horror movies in general. So, I would like to know your relationship with horror movies. Like, when was your first horror movie? Why do you like horror movies? Just tell me about that.
Well, I grew up with a very film-centered family. My family wasn't really in the film business, but their relationship to film was very strong and prominent, especially with my stepdad. My mom and my stepdad live up in rural Washington, and up there we have no internet, so it's just like DVD, pawn shop city. You know, you got to watch whatever you can. And I was forced to watch things like The Blob, The Fly, Them, which, you know, was really impactful, being like 7, 8 years old, watching those movies from the 50s. But to me, they were pretty horrifying. I think my first horror movie was Jaws, Steven Spielberg's, one of the first ever blockbuster movies, which I don't know if some people would call a horror movie now, but when you're very young and you see a shark rip apart a boy your age, it's pretty terrifying. It makes you not want to go near salt water, any kind of water.
By the sound of it, you didn't like horror movies.
No, I was terrified. I remember when all of these would come out, especially the newer ones like Insidious and The Conjuring movies, being taunted by my family, the people that I trust, making threats that I will watch these movies and be terrified. And I never wanted to. It was only recently that I found out that the horror movie genre is ever expanding and quite freaking fascinating. It's incredible.
How recently would you say?
I would say probably my sophomore year of high school. No. I'm not that much of a loser. I think 8th grade. 8th grade is when I first started going to the movies with my friends and seeing horror movies. Like, I specifically remember Shyamalan's The Visit, which was great, and then the Poltergeist remake, which was not great, but, you know, I still ventured out of my comfort zone. And that's where it all began. Truly. That's where it truly began, I would say.
I think that's very funny that you say that, because I too have a relationship with my family. They never forced me to watch any horror movies, but they definitely did love their fair share of horror pranks on me. and I was always very sensitive to scares, and I hated being scared. So personally, I have this very strange relationship with horror because I am fascinated. You had a point to make that was very good, that the horror movie genre is fascinating. I have never seen more interesting, peculiar plot than with horror movies. Like, you just don't get that. Even with sci-fi, it's hard to get that sense of like, wow, this is very out of the ordinary. This is very intriguing. And there is a human urge within us to these things that are kind of gross and morbid. They're still so interesting to us, even though they are so terrifying. So that's how I feel. I hate scares. I hate jump scares. I hate all that kind of stuff. But I will sit on my phone for hours, like reading Wikipedia plots, watching videos dissecting these movies, so I don't have to deal with the tension and the horror, because I just cannot. I'll like crawl. My skin will crawl if I have to watch these movies. You saw me. I was like wriggling around in the couch. I like could not stand it.
Yeah, I thought you were going to pass out. I was a little concerned.
Okay, it wasn't that bad.
Well, all right. Well, I digress.
It was... But it was definitely like I couldn't watch. I just had to like become a fetus and like close my eyes and cover my ears. But I'm just fascinated with all this kind of stuff. So how did you grow to like horror movies? Like, what intrigued you? Was it also the plot?
Well, I think for anybody, it's that willingness to be scared, and it's that want to be scared in a safe environment. It's the same reason people love to go to haunted houses or haunted corn mazes. It's that willingness to be thrown into a dangerous situation without the actual danger. You know, you take it back to the days of the cave people. You know, our fears were used as defense mechanisms against spiders or fire or giant land sharks, you know, whatever it was back then. I don't really. But it's that same, you know, that thrill rushing, endorphin inducing, just fun that takes the dangerous aspect and kind of smooths it out onto this like 9-layer cake of just, you know, fun, thrills. I'm not gonna list all 9 layers because I don't know. But you know what I mean. It's kind of this like 9-layer cake of every emotion you can experience. But then once you're done, it's that, oh, you know, I just ate a cake. You know, spending an hour and a half in a very dark, secluded place to then enter out into the light with your friends and family. It's that momentary fear that's so fun. It's the same thing that makes a jump scare work in some scenarios. That buildup of suspense and tension to immediate shock, momentary relief. A jump scare usually ends in laughter. That's that relief that you get. That's those endorphins entering your body. I don't know if they're...
A jump scare ends in laughter?
Yes. Don't you get... You get scared, you acknowledge the scare, and you laugh about it, you know? That's something your body does as a defense mechanism. But in this case, this defense mechanism isn't, you know, running away from a giant squid. It's laughing with your friends. Unless you're alone, then again, you might turn the movie off. It's that flight or fight response that you probably heard of. That's so prevalent.
Why do you think that other people like them? For the same reasons, or just...
I think majority of people who do like horror movies like them for that specific reason. I know for a fact that's why my parents love them. That's where I get this idea of fear is so thrilling, and of course, speaking on it, that might be a very sensitive thing to talk about because a lot of people experience horrifying things in a non-safe environment. So, saying that that's what makes it so fun for you is, could be a little touchy.
No, I think that's definitely what makes it good.
Yeah.
The whole aspect that you're not actually in danger.
Yes, exactly.
So now that we've been over, like, why you like them, how about you walk me through the history of horror movies?
Oh,
where did it start? Where are we now? And how do they differ? Because, I know there's a huge difference between, like, Twilight Zone and like Hereditary. Walk us through that.
Okay, so I just want to specify that I am no expert. This is just a little research I've been doing over the years. So the birth of the horror movie comes from the French film, which, okay, I'll try to pronounce. Les Manoirs du Diable, which means the haunted castle or the house of the devil. It wasn't until about the early 1920s that like the birth of these horror movie monsters started to come into place. For example, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the Wolf Man, Creature from the Black Lagoon, actors like, Bela Lugosi taking on these roles. And it definitely reflects, especially after the events of the stock market crash, I think people wanted to see their fears reflected on screen as these horrifying monsters, mainly so they could address them in a fun and entertaining way rather than, addressing them head on. So, let's put our sadness into these, creature features and have a little fun with it rather than being super upset what's going on. And then that leads us into, 1940s, 1960s, kind of post World War II era, post the Red Scare. People were very scared of nuclear holocaust. And, that gives us movies such as Godzilla, Mothra, Them, the movie with the giant ants, dealing with the fear of living in a post-apocalyptic world and what that stuff could do to our environment, to bugs and to ants, And also, back in the day, the fear of communism was a big deal. And, the fear of other countries and being true to, being an American, that was very important for a lot of people. So you start seeing the birth of movies such as Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Blob, The Thing from Another World. And these are movies where outside forces, mainly aliens, come in and they start to, here, let me just say, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers is just like, The Thing, the villain, like, looks like us, it's, that fear that, any, commie man could be one of us and we would have no idea. So we had to band together to take it down.
Very Red Scare, yes.
Very Red Scare, exactly. However, everything changed, 1960, with a shower curtain, I should say, with Alfred Hitchcock.
Wonderfully dramatic. Wonderfully dramatic.
Everything changed with the toilet. That makes sense. In a second, you'll understand what I mean. Just go with it. Alfred Hitchcock, the man, the myth, the legend. Everyone knows a good Hitchcock tale. He broke all of the rules of horror. He challenged audiences with flawed heroes and heroines and offered up more blood, which wasn't really seen before, mainly for the switch to Technicolor, but these Red Scare movies didn't really involve much gore, and Alfred decided he wanted to challenge his viewers. Also, just the idea of, no, there's no spoilers. This movie's been out for over 80 years. For example, Psycho, taking the famous actor Janet Leigh at the time, who people thought, all over the promotions she was the star of the movie, but killing her not even halfway through. That's something that was never seen before. That's chaos. Chaos, you say. I say chaos. But Alfred Hitchcock didn't care if you thought his movies were incoherent or hard to follow. He challenged his viewers. And he did it in a very great way. So now we peer slightly into the 70s. You start to see, the effects of the Vietnam War, post-Vietnam War. You see the assassination of JFK and Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King. And people start to understand that we as a people are to be feared more than out of space aliens. Or you start to see such movies as, Texas Chainsaw, Night of the Living Dead. These films explored horror and the political turmoil that people were feeling at the time. especially with Night of the Living Dead. Night of the Living Dead, if I could just take a quick sidebar, back in the day, there was really no rating system. So this movie would be played on like a Saturday matinee, which meant kids would be going in to see this movie. Obviously, I would assume mortified. If not, then you're an awesome kid. But stuff like this people didn't really care about, because this is the fear that was really important to them, and they wanted it to be expressed onto the big screen. As we shift into the 70s and the 80s, this is where horror really starts to become one of its own, I would say. These movies started exploring like some of the more common horror movie tropes, such as two of the most prominent, I would think, would be The Final Girl and Death by Sex. And both of these were explored wonderfully by John Carpenter, same director as The Thing, but John Carpenter's masterpiece, Halloween. The idea of Jamie Lee Curtis, who's actually Janet Leigh's daughter, who some may say is the original Scream Queen in Psycho, but Jamie Lee Curtis definitely wears the crown for that. But, in that movie, she plays Laurie Strode, and she's the good girl, she's the virgin of the neighborhood, and she's able to defend herself while her more promiscuous, horny friends, are out getting killed by Michael Myers, because, sex is bad, and you should be a virgin, These tropes showing in such movies as Black Christmas, Alien, Suspiria, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street. The Final Girl became a very prominent feature in horror movies. Same thing with Jaws. The opening of Jaws shows, the immorality of like sex, drugs, and alcohol. And what better way to show that immorality than have a living, breathing, drunk girl, horny girl, get attacked by a giant great white shark. And that definitely probably showed kids, like, if you're looking for a hookup, don't go to the ocean. Yeah. Okay. Entering into the 90s and the 2000s, people were getting very sick of the the remakes and gore being piled into the movies. So audiences become much smarter. Horror movies become much more referential, and the slasher genre begins to be reignited, most prominently in Wes Craven's Scream, which I think is definitely up there in my top 3 favorite horror movies. Now it seems kind of silly, but at the time, it was the first movie to have the characters kind of reflect ourselves. They were talking about the movies we watched. They were watching Halloween with Jamie Lee Curtis, talking about Jamie Lee Curtis. The killers are kids who know these movies and seen these movies, so they're smarter, and they get away with these murders because they act in the way that people act in movies. And it's really fascinating. You see this also in stuff like I Know What You Did Last Summer and in the Final Destination series. Also in the 90s, it's the birth of the 24-hour news coverage and the actual birth of true crime, which showed audiences, the true horror of like the human being and how a person like really ticks. And so the idea of making a horror villain, captivating and like what goes on in their mind, that was really important. So then you start to see movies such as, American Psycho, Seven, Misery, with Kathy Bates famously, and the big one, Silence of the Lambs. Hannibal Lecter is one of the most captivating horror movie villains of all time. He kind of reels us and Clarice in with his, He reels us and Clarice in with his, humanity and his flaws, and you start to see his real self showing, but without seconds passing. We understand still how brutal and how just strong his crave for human flesh, really is. But he's not a boilerplate character. He has levels and he has flaws, and he's just really fascinating. Not only that, but Silence of the Lambs is the only horror movie to win the Big Five at the Oscars, which is Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Director, and Best Picture. Other horror movies have won Oscars, but this was the only one to win those top 5. into the early 2000s, with the popularity of reality TV, you start to see the birth of, the low-budget found footage film, famously coined by the Blair Witch Project. There was actually a movie before that called Cannibal Holocaust, which came out in the 80s, which could be considered the birth of found footage, but that movie is pretty much banned everywhere and is very horrifying. So we'll just say it's Blair Witch Project for now. But the idea of low budget, very high thrills. The creators of that movie made back so much money because the budget was so low. It gives the impression this could happen with anybody. And then into the 2010s, you start to see, the war on terror and Iraq that's always televised. And, we start to see movies where people will try at anything to do. They will try anything they can to do to survive. With 28 Days Later, The Mist, Saw. And then we get into now, the birth of paranormal starts to become very scary. We start to fear stuff of the afterlife, such as Paranormal Activity, Insidious, The Conjuring universe. Jordan Peele comes out of nowhere, with Get Out, which is Oscar-winning proof, that the horror in real life and in movies can take many forms. And he expertly, explores the subgenres of like psychological and technological horror, while also examining the traumas of, modern day society and institutionalized racism. And he packs that all into one solid, just, bite of this horror movie sandwich. And now we're up to date. You see the birth of, woke horror movies. That seems to be our main event now. But I guarantee you, in the near future, we're going to start to see many more medical horror movies, probably some viral horror movies.
Well, I mean, what was Contagion?
Right.
I find that I also see a trend where people are making these horror movies that take real fears that could happen, maybe not things that are happening in this world, but things that are possible.
Yes.
Like the birth of all these man-run produce farms and things like that are known to produce these horrible diseases. How extreme can you take that idea? People are already fearful of it, so how far into that fear can we take it? And I think that's why movies like Contagion came out, why movies explore AI and the expansion of robotic technologies and what is AI and what is too far, and like these things that are real fears among us. A lot of times people are like, let's take that, let's run with it. And I don't even know. I mean, maybe not even medical horror from now on, but like, what have we learned now that we are fearful of?
Right. Yeah. Horror movies are always reflecting, what's going on in the real world.
Yeah, and like what might come. I don't know. What would even be something that's like looming over us that we're afraid of? Because it feels like what was looming over us has already happened, but maybe like something, it must be, I have a feeling that in terms of looming dangers that people can pull from, it has to be political.
Oh, yeah.
Like the Purge is a good example of like a looming political threat. Like, how far can our government take something? I can see that happening too.
Absolutely.
Because maybe it didn't happen in the world yet to affect us, but everyone's thinking about it. Right. How far can you take that? Especially
if something happens in the near future, in, November. If that happens, then I think, the idea of a political terror was definitely a huge possibility. And the Purge is a great example of that. That was already started around that same time. Like Purge Election Year is a fantastic movie, and it comments on many horrible things that seem very, very plausible that could happen in the next 10 to 20 years. That's what's so scary about it. It's just like, wow, that could actually happen.
So we've been over the eras of horror movies. Let's go through the genres.
There's many genres and there's many subgenres.
I just want to hear your thoughts on them, what they're like, and maybe some movies that people can associate with that.
Okay. Well, first of all, that French film I mentioned, kind of the horror before everything, that would be known as gothic horror. And that kind of precedes every horror movie that we know.
Like in terms of, that's just a literature form of, like that's
Yes.
literature horror.
Yes.
That has been adapted to the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then we get such genres such as, no particular order, science fiction, psychological horror, the slasher film, gore horror, or a subgenre that would be splatter. You got your fantasy horror.
Let's go to splatter. I know everyone except for splatter. Can you explain that one?
Okay, yeah. Splatter and gore are practically the same thing. Splatter would be such movies as, the Evil Dead series, anything Sam Raimi, really, where blood is kind of the forefront rather than character or plot. That's mainly what a splatter film would be.
How does that differ from gore?
It really doesn't. Gore is more intestinal insides, like, gore, gruesome. Splatter is more just blood.
Would you say it's more campy?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay,
yeah. Extremely campy.
That helps.
Sorry,
Yep.
I should have said that. And then you got your fantasy horror, dark fantasy. A great example of that would be Pan's Labyrinth, Guillermo del Toro. He works great with fantasy horror. Then you got your body horror, and that would be, The Thing. The Thing is a great example of body horror.
So that wouldn't be gore? Or would it just be both?
No, I would consider that to be body horror and gore as well, but mainly body horror for sure. The Thing, The Blob, too. Or no, anything David Cronenberg, like The Fly, Jeff Goldblum's The Fly, the remake. Yeah, that's definitely absolutely body horror.
Human Centipede?
Human Centipede could be considered
Tusk?
body horror.
Oh.
Tusk is, a great example of body horror. Kevin Smith is, he's a psychopath. But it works sometimes. Tusk was weird. Okay. A subgenre of body horror would be like Lovecraftian horror. The Thing could be a good example of Lovecraftian. You get these Lovecraft monsters with tentacles and big mouths and round. Lovecraft, right? Lovecraft work.
Yep.
Then you got your found footage. Of course, that's pretty self-explanatory. You got your monster horror, or creature features, otherwise known as that is paranormal horror. And then you got your comedy horror. Yeah. There's more. Probably, but those are kind of the main ones.
I mean, you can put a label on anything if you want
really
to.
could put a label on it.
Which one's your favorite?
Oh, I love a good slasher. That'd be probably like the comfort food favorite horror movie, the slasher film. Same with comedy horror. If done well, comedy horror is fantastic. But I think obviously the most interesting is the psychological one. That's the one that really delves into, our true human fears. And I think those always end up being the best if it's not overplayed. I think a good, Ari Aster is great at the psychological horror. Hereditary and Midsommar. Those are super successful, and they're amazing movies.
I'm going to say, in terms of palatable for me, comedic horror.
Yeah.
That's really the only one I can take without being too, it just eases the tension of it all for me.
What's your favorite comedic horror movie?
Cabin in the Woods is genius.
Yeah.
Name some. Can you name some comedic horror ones? Because I think I've seen more than that. You
got Shaun of the Dead, Zombieland, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Of course, Cabin in the Woods. I would consider Scream to be a comedy horror movie. Maybe that's just a slasher film with comedy.
Oh, the scary movies. Is that just comedy? Or does that even count as comedy horror?
Well, I honestly would consider the first Scary Movie to be a horror movie because it is kind of scary. It is a slasher film, and that's the only one that I think succeeds in being a parody of the slasher genre.
Yeah.
Which interesting enough is weird that they did that because Scream was already kind of a parody or a satire of the slasher genre, and so the fact that Scary Movie went and did that was pretty insane.
Yeah, but I would definitely say Cabin in the Woods only because of those final scenes. I am obsessed. I'm also I love psychological thrillers are probably I think that they're the most worthy of accolade. Mm-hmm. When I see one, I can barely palate psychological thrillers. They're just too much for me. I could barely stand still. But I think that they're the most ingenious. And then also I'd say a mix between gore or like a creature feature. Because, and that's why I think Cabin in the Woods is so ingenious, because I love the mythos and I love the world building that comes with horror. Mm-hmm. And I love this concept of, well, what's this monster like? I was always the kid that, like, with Ben 10, like, I only cared when they gave when an alien came out. And then after a while, I just wanted a new alien.
Yeah.
Or things like that. I love the world building of it all. So that's probably why I loved Cabin in the Woods too, because you got to see like all these creatures, not only in terms of references to other films, which was ingenious in itself, but you got to see like these powers and abilities. You were like, oh, what does that one do? What does that one do? Mm-hmm. To me, that's really interesting.
Yeah. And, you know, not only that, but just the way Cabin in the Woods kind of... well, first of all, the way Cabin in the Woods breaks down, you know, the tropes of a
the deconstruction,
movie. Yeah, the deconstruction. You know, you got the idea of the virgin, the final girl, the goofball, the stoner, the jock, the horny girl, and then the smarty pants. You know, the 5 main horror tropes, and the idea that they have to be sacrificed to the kind of gods of horror, practically.
And that is Lovecraftian too.
Yes,
these huge gods. Not only that, but the whole concept in Cabin in the Woods that you pick something and then your course is predetermined. Mm-hmm. Like that's another thing in horror movies. Like once you pick up what the horror movie is beginning to like give you, you can plan a path. Mm-hmm. Which is one of the critiques of horror movies I find. Like nowadays, unoriginal everybody, as people say, but like sometimes it's like you see a horror movie start, you see any movie start, and then 15 minutes in, you're like, okay, I can plan where this is going to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is why films like Scream was ingenious. Mm-hmm. Films that completely subverted
that genre. Mm. Cabin in the Woods also makes you look at any horror movie differently, kind of in a like a, oh, that's kind of funny way.
Also, I relate to the character who is like, I just want to see the merman. You know what I mean? That's how I am. Uh-huh. I'm like, I just want to see the creature. I want to see how far you can take it. So I also think that that's ingenious, the way that in the end it was like, well, he got what he wanted.
Yeah.
And then he was like,
yeah, no, those two characters are great because they're, you know, it's us. It's our audience view into every horror movie. You know, like the fact that they're all betting on which monster it's going to be, you know, to kill these helpless kids. The fact that they want these characters to have sex, so they release a pheromone, you know, into the woods, so they get, you know, super horny, and then they have sex. The fact that they have people viewing, they have a literal audience viewing these sacrifices,
and that it's all in a bunker, which presents that beautiful thing we talked about earlier, which is horror is fun because it's safe. Mm-hmm. And it's not for us. But then as soon as the tides are turned, like it's almost being like, well, this is what would have happened if we just released all this horror stuff you love to watch other people go through on you.
Yeah. Sorry about your luck, buddy, but here you go.
Yeah.
Here's what you wanted. Yeah. No, I'd never thought about it like that before. Of course, you know, they're safe and they're happy and they're having fun. There's a character in it who's a bodyguard who's like, is this a little messed up that you're betting on this? And they're like, hey, you know, whatever the audience wants, that's what they want. They you know, they get a point to, we want to show a woman's breast because that'll give us more views and that'll make our audience happier. You know?
Yeah. So in terms of genres, we have to go into tropes.
Yes.
Horror movie tropes. I think that some of them are classic. I love them. I think Final Girl is so cool to me. I don't know. It seems like horror movies would be the type to subvert any original genre or any non-horror movie. So this idea that it's the girl that survives, it's not about the man for once. Mm-hmm. That is really cool to me. But then I also have some contentions with it. I think that the worst trope for me, and maybe it's not even a trope, but more of a critique, but horror movie characters are so stupid. And I don't know, is it the point that they make these choices that aren't even reasonable to an audience to believe why they would do that and make them like want to get out of their chair and shout? Is that purposeful, or is that just to drive the plot?
I think honestly the stupidest decisions are just lazy screenwriting. It's an easy cop out. Why would you have, your final girl, run out the door to safety when she could run up the stairs and get herself trapped more in the house. So there's more screen time with her and the villain.
But I just feel like that makes such an empty story. And I mean, you can't change this. I'm like, please change this for me, as if you have any power. But it always rubs me the wrong way when characters make stupid decisions that lead them into the path of danger. Yeah. Because what's more terrifying is for them to try to run away and try to be safe, and then end up in a worse position. I'm thinking, this is a bad example because I think the character was still stupid, but Skeleton Key, when the main girl was like, well, this is a protection spell, and she was like, you are so stupid. You just trapped yourself in a circle, and then made it so much easier for me to, I don't want to spoil Skeleton Key, but the horror, it's really, they get the innocent girl right where they want them by thinking they're setting this protection spell, but really they're entrapping them in a circle. And then that's cool because you're like, oh, well, the only other option is to just run away as soon as something sounded suspicious. But then I do get how that would just create no story.
Also, you got to think, like, how would you act in these situations? Of course, sitting on the couch, you think like, oh, that's like, that's the dumbest thing you could do, But I feel like in a stressful situation where I'm not really thinking, I probably also would make a really dumb decision. And what makes a smart decision and a dumb decision?
We'll get to that later when we talk about The Thing.
Yeah, because I know you had a lot of comments during the movie.
If I'm going to be completely honest, half of the comments, I was being very verbal during that movie.
Yes,
and
you were.
To any audience,
no shame.
Any audience members who find problems with people who talk during movies, it was a stress reliever too.
Yeah,
like to comment it was to step farther away from the reality of it, and to not get yourself being like, oh, this could happen to me. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I hate horror movies, and he knows that, so. He just got mad because I mixed up the remake with the original, and spoiler alert, the dog at the end of the remake ends up becoming the dog at the beginning of the first movie. And I didn't think that. I thought since it was a remake, it was the same plot. So I was like, what's that dog doing out there? And I was like, something's going to happen to that dog. And then Joey was like, it already happened.
Well, just when I saw the movie, that was an incredible reveal to me. And the fact that you had to spoil it for, poor Josh.
Incredible. How old were you when you watched that movie?
I literally saw this movie over quarantine.
And that was a reveal to you? Okay,
no, it was not a reveal.
Even not knowing, I could have picked up on.
Okay, but It was not a reveal.
They were shooting at a dog.
I know.
You know the plot of the story. Okay, they were shooting at a dog. Okay, so the story is about a creature that you know from the beginning, coming into it, if you watched any of the trailers, can mimic anyone. They were shooting at a dog, and then the dog, comes in, bites them, acts very suspicious, watches these people as if any dog would just
bites. When does the dog bite anybody?
At the billiard scene. That's why he gets sent into the cage.
He just scared him. He just scurried on by. Whatever.
The point is that this dog acted suspicious from the very beginning, and they were trying to kill this dog. Mm-hmm. And this story is about a shape-shifting monster. Right. So how was that a surprise to you?
Okay. So the reveal, I was not revealed that was the thing when it turned in, when it started. Tentacles started spreading out of its, eyes. Just when you first sit down and you see that dog kind of running and you see someone shooting at it, it's a dog. So I was like, oh no, I hope it's okay. I hope it doesn't die. I assumed these copter pilots were hunting this wolf, this husky. But then the direction is so well. Especially with this dog, who is an incredible dog actor, and you start seriously. He did a great job. He should get a Ruffy award.
Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
No, it's not. I made you think it was. Anyway, the dog does great, but the direction is done so well, and the camera movements. You start to piece together. Oh. Why were they shooting at this dog? They weren't hunting it. This dog is, the thing. That's what I thought when I saw the movie, and it was a great reveal to have to like process that in my brain and then to realize that real time.
I do think that it was a great reveal I think it was such a great introduction to the gore of it all.
Yeah.
I would say that I knew that the dog was the thing.
Yes.
And I knew it was going to transform.
Yes.
But when its face just completely peeled away, I was like, oh, so it's that kind of movie. Like, that was a shock to me. And I will say, in regards to stupid characters, I had a horror moment of myself. And I'm not talking about the 40 minutes it took to set up these microphones because the driver broke. The driver wasn't updated.
Yeah, it was painful.
As Joey was going to a vending machine, he got locked out of the place. And then he threw pebbles out my window to try to let me back in because he left. For me to try to let him back in because he didn't bring his phone.
I did.
Now,
that was stupid.
Of course, after watching The Thing, my first instinct was like, what do I do? To be honest, I kind of had a moment where I was like, am I going to make a dumb decision? Because I couldn't like tell what was dumb. I was like, if I run, I have enough space. Like, I was like, do I have the space to run if like the window breaks open and something comes through? And then I just saw his phone and I was like, oh yeah, he's locked out. Okay. But it doesn't go to show you, I guess I will devil's advocate myself and say there's a point to be made that people under stressful situations make stupid choices. However, my stupid choice would be away from anything dangerous and not towards it. But we will get into The Thing in a minute. I want to diatribe for a second. Jump scares, I think, are a very important part of the horror genre.
Yeah.
My least favorite part of the horror genre. I swear to God, if a movie is horror but it doesn't have jump scares and gore, I think I could deal with it. But usually
you don't do good with gore?
I'm fascinated by it. I can do like the cover your eyes, but like look through with a little, like look through the little slit in your fingers.
Well, I'm excited to hear your thoughts on The Thing then.
Oh my God, The Thing. It was bad. It wasn't okay. Practical effects are very good to me because they kind of look realistic, but they also don't.
Yeah.
It is Uncanny Valley, this concept that like it's human, but it's, Uncanny Valley, right?
Yeah.
That it's human, but it's not really that human. But at the same time, it was practical effects, which makes me feel comforted for some reason. I don't know. But gore, like Final Destination was the first horror movie. Here's my first horror movie experience. So I watched from the corner of, I was in a door frame essentially because I was fascinated. This is when I started becoming fascinated in the plots of horror movie. I heard my sister and my brothers watching this film, Final Destination 3. I was listening and this concept sounded really cool. This idea that you cheated death, therefore you must get it in return 10 times worse, and how the rules of death worked. And I ended up standing in the door frame and watching it like literally from the corner, like not even seeing it fully in view because it was so disgusting to me. And I thought the roller coaster scene was fascinating. And one thing that stuck in my head more than anything else, I think there are 3 deaths that I remember the most. It's the roller coaster scene, the sign slamming down on him, but not because I was gory, just because I was shocking and you didn't expect it. Also, this tension building. It's also, I think Final Destination is a masterclass in how to build tension, even though they kind of shove it down your throat.
Yeah, they really do.
But I think the most memorable death was the tanning bed death, where they get trapped in the tanning bed. Oh, it was the worst. It was so. As I was talking about earlier before the podcast started, I hate a fate worse than death movie is so intriguing to me and yet so terrifying. Anything that is like Skeleton Key. What were we talking about?
Like Tusk. That's fate worse than death.
Tusk. The Craft. The Craft is where the girl gets binded and then she ends up losing all her powers and they deem her as insane. So she gets put in a mental institution. Anything where it's like eternal hell, eternal. Oh my God. Oh, this is what I was thinking of. Before when I was talking to you, I couldn't figure it out. Drag Me to Hell.
Drag Me to Hell.
Drag Me to Hell is the perfect fate worse than death film.
Yeah.
Perfect. The concept that, and it also touches on something that I also hate about horror is when the undeserving person gets the one who is the one who gets tortured. Because all she did was deny someone who was already way overdue on all of her fees and completely overstepping the rules of the bank.
Right.
Curses her for doing her job. And then she ends up getting sent to hell because of it.
Yeah.
For eternity. Not only fate worse than death, but also totally undeserving. Nothing like a Saw film where you have this concept that they are already like wrongdoers and therefore should suffer because of it. But this idea that something that you do, like even doing your job and not even an unreasonable thing, can get you sent literally to damnation. That is the worst. I hate it. I just think that gore, like those are and although they are my least favorite parts about horror and make it hard to watch a film as it is, it makes it so fascinating to dissect these things. Scary Movies to Tell in the Dark is a great example of these creepy things that are the plots are fascinating. The guy who turns into a scarecrow, like, come on, like that's
Come on.
It's wonderfully
fabulous.
Creative. It's from a creator. We are both creators as actors. We are both people who love to fabricate things.
Right.
It is, and we love it when we are given a lot to work with. Horror movies are the most to work with. They're so beyond reality. It's just so, I don't know. As much as I love it, I hate it. I don't know. It's so weird to me. Such a dichotomy. Anyways, let's get into, we've talked enough about Fate Worse Than Death and me talking about how much it sucks. Although I do think that there's a fascination. Okay.
No, go for it.
He's going to go off script. Whoa, he's going rogue. Fate Worse Than Death is horrible, but it's been as far back as Dr. Faustus, a Renaissance play about a guy who makes a deal with the devil, 24 years of magical powers for eternity in hell. And then at the end of it, he's like, well, damn, like 24 years wasn't worth it, and I wasted it. He ended up wasting it. He didn't use his powers for anything other than tricking other people. And then he had to face eternity in hell. And that might even be the root of horror itself, this concept that you can suffer for eternity. Because that's endless. It's not death and it's over. Horror movies, oftentimes you get killed, but then you get killed.
Yeah, it's done. Bye-bye.
When you explore what happens after that, that's what's
that's where the true
fascinating,
horror really comes in.
Almost gory in a sense. I think we all have a fascination for what happens after death, or so this idea of fate worse than death is just as fascinating. Like, because fate worse than death, to me, Tusk can be, I guess it's suffering, but it's suffering with a limit. It's when it has no limit. It's when it's an endless amount of time. It becomes so intriguing, and you really get to explore. It forces you to be creative with it.
That's why the paranormal films have gotten so popular.
Yeah.
It's the idea of, exploring, the fear of the afterlife.
It's almost like there's no other room for such creativity but in horror. How far can you go with imagination? I almost feel like it's a circle, and it's the farthest ranks, the farthest circle, the farthest rings are horror. Because once you get so far as to how creative can you get without becoming horror? That's what I'm saying. Let's pose this question. How creative do you think that you can become super creative without veering into horror? Or do you think that the peak of creativity comes from the horror genre?
Well, I think that it's like the universe. Horror is like our universe. There really is no ending. I don't think you can go too far or too little. Really, anything could be considered horror. And I don't know if that would really, I don't know if someone really wants to say that, like, oh, it's really creative that we can make anything into horror. But I do think that horror is the most creative genre. Like Charlie Kaufman's new movie, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, is literally a horror movie just about existing and about, remembering your past and, reflecting on what could have been. Like, that's scary. Like, the human mind is probably the scariest thing in the world because, we know nothing about it. Scientists don't even know how it works. So, the fact that anything can be considered scary or in the horror genre, I think that's what makes it so creative, I guess is what you were trying to say.
Yeah, I mean it's horror is what is, and also it's what's the limit of human capability? Because slasher films aren't really rooted in fantasy per se, but definitely have an aspect of humans outside of their natural occurrences, outside of their natural behavior. I'm thinking of Ending Things as a good example. It also reminded me of She Dies Tomorrow, where basically it starts with this one woman being like, I'm going to die tomorrow. I just know. How do you know? I don't know. I'm just going to. And then the person who called her, that happens to her. And then the people she hangs out with, it happens to them. It ends up being like a pandemic almost of people thinking they're going to die tomorrow. I'm almost 100% certain that at the end of this movie, you don't even know if they die the next day.
Yeah, I think that's been really popular recently. Maybe a subgenre of the psychological thriller, but like the actual like psychoanalysis of human beings. I've noticed that more frequently. We're scary. We're scary people, and we all make scary decisions, especially placed in power.
So let me not spread any false information. The end of this movie is the people would kill themselves.
Oh, okay.
But they wouldn't.
Spoiler.
But they wouldn't die of unnatural. Oh, did I ruin it for you?
Did you spoil the movie for me?
No, because I didn't. First of all, I didn't explain any of the characters, and not all of them die. It's the point is that what ends up happening to them is that it's not like an actual disease where they die unnaturally. They kill themselves. I'm going to die tomorrow, they say, as if it's not happening to, like they're not doing it to themselves, and yet they acted upon themselves.
Kind of like a better Bird Box. I didn't like Bird Box.
Yeah.
If you can tell by that comment. So I thought it was boring.
Okay. Let's veer back on track after
we were talking about jump scares.
We were talking about jump scares.
Talked about that.
Well, I hate jump scares, but I love... Jump scares are actually one thing that, like, there's nothing for me to like about them.
That's very reasonable. I understand why. Most jump scares are done they're overplayed and they're not done well. I think I can only name like a few jump scares that actually succeed in what they're trying to do.
Which ones?
There's one great one in Sinister. It's always my example. It's Sinister is a movie about Ethan Hawke, is watching all these films. That's a great description. So Ethan Hawke is watching this one film about this family. It always ends up in one child ending up killing the whole family. And they're old, like, film reels from the 70s and 80s. And so this one takes place, it's like a camera watching a family, watching a movie or something. And then it cuts to a low-angle shot of a lawnmower. And it's just like mowing the lawn. And he's watching. And it's just mowing the lawn for kind of an excess of time. And then it like runs right over this lady kind of tied to the ground, the mom. And it's this stinger of music, and it comes out of nowhere. And it's so great because there is this build-up tension, because every other film we've seen, we know people are going to die. So the fact that this lawnmower is on the ground and where it's probably going to go, but the stinger of music is what really gets it.
So it was a jump scare, but audio, or was it visual too?
It was visual. It's both.
Okay.
A jump scare, I think, succeeds perfectly with a great combination of audio, visual. What is that called? Audio, visual.
And was it a music audio? Was it music audio, like a sting, like an actual musical
it was
sting?
it was like a loud viol. It was like a bow.
Yeah, because that's so much better than like just a scream.
Yeah.
Because when I think of jump scares, I think of the Maze Game.
What is that?
Oh my God! How do you not know the Maze Game?
I don't know. How do you not know everything I've been talking about? Can I ask you the same question?
Hold on. Let me make sure that I'm saying this right. Maze
Runner. Another great jump scare while you're looking that up is the clap from The Conjuring. It's fantastic. Are you covering that so you don't see the scary images?
I can't.
He was looking up something on his iPad, and then he had to cover it with his hands so he didn't see how scary it was.
I hate it. I can't. It's
embarrassing.
A good example for me is like, for horror, I can't dive into a pool, but I can like dip my toe in and then slowly bring the rest of my body into the pool.
Okay, yeah. You have to ease into the...
Like, I can't just do, like scary images. It's too much for me, but I can be like, cover my eyes and then like see a little bit and then be like, okay, I could just watch it now. Yeah. It's called The Maze Game. It's it was this game where you trace your mouse around the maze.
If
the mouse
not a movie.
touched-
Yeah.
If the mouse touched the black, then it was a jump scare of that lady. I also know that from the video of like
car
it's like
commercial?
the car driving through the hills,
driving through
and
the
then that she
windy woods.
because I think that's the original video with the jump scare because
that's
she
like the
comes
main
up
one.
within the frame in the mountain, but the Scary Maze game just takes that as a clip.
Yeah.
But like that's how I know jump scares, and that's how I've grown to hate
that was
them.
probably the
Essentially,
first jump scare I ever saw was the fake car commercial.
it was the first one for me.
It's terrifying. Oh gosh. So why does that work so well?
Especially, I mean, once you know that it's going to come, that's why I hate it. I mean, in The Thing, like, as we were watching the movie, I was like, as soon as I could, I have such a sixth sense for it now that I can tell. The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is not a horror show.
Right.
It's like Riverdale, but like fantasy, essentially. But even that has like jump scare-y moments, like kind of. And I could just sense when it would come. And even watching a non-horror thing, I was like, nope. I was like, cover my eyes, put it down, put it on the side, listen for it, because I can do it. I could do it audio, like auditorily. So you don't like jump scares either?
No, I do. It just some don't succeed very well. Than others.
Keep naming ones you like, because I want to see if I can know. Some of these.
Well, I think, if we go to The Thing, there's a great jump scare when they're testing the blood. And he tests Palmer's blood, and it kind of like screams and shoots out of the vial.
That one was good. I liked the one where the chest opened up more.
Really?
I think that was more of a subversive jump scare.
Well, I think,
and I think it shows that it's subversive because jump scares happen outward.
Oh,
this is me talking. This is so like uppity actor talk kind of, and like, but to be honest, all jump scares happen outward. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of crazy that there was such a strong motion, because it happened when he was giving CPR. Mm-hmm. So there was such a strong motion inward, and then the jump scare was not that something popped out, but something pushed through.
Yeah.
Like where you thought there was once a solid, there wasn't. Mm-hmm. And that concept of a jump scare happening inward instead of outward was so intriguing to me. Because that was, and then it was just terrifying because someone's chest opened up and ate someone's arms. But that's what I'm talking about in terms of this opportunity for being subversive. But I do understand the blood one. Is there any other ones that I would know? Because I do know like horror movies, essentially. I think
the jump scare in The Conjuring 2 with the tent and kind of this scream, this man's scream, I think it works well just because the scream is so unsettling. I love the idea because a jump scare is, a build up and release of tension. And I love when a jump scare works so well that the tension is building up, you can't even feel it. That's why I think that Thing one works so well, is because, he's testing the blood and all this tension. It's like, oh, what's going to happen if someone's the Thing? And then they test like 5 vials and no one's the Thing. And it finally cuts to Larry and he's like, this is just a load of bullshit. None of this is going to work. And he's like, oh, we're trying it. And it's kind of shot in a way where it looks like nothing's going to happen. And he's like, we'll try Palmer's. And he sticks it in and it's like, boom. And it's like, there has this tension has been building up. We had no idea.
Well, what's the magic of that scene was that they thought it was going to be the other guy. Who was it? The one who shot in the beginning, like the sheriff?
Clark.
Clark.
No, Larry. That's the guy they cut to before the jump scare.
What was so great about that in particular was not only did you not expect it to happen, you expected it to happen with Larry. Because they were like, well, we'll do yours last, because he was the most suspicious of it.
Right.
So you're like, oh, it's totally going to be Larry because he's the one who doesn't want it to happen. They save him for last. So I didn't even expect the second to last one to be, because that one actually got me as a jump scare. Like it was so good at subverting.
And it's so great because that character has been so just there, kind of so unsuspicious. He's been helping out and stuff, but you kind of forget about him in this sequence. And the fact that it's him, it just comes out of nowhere.
And it's almost, I think, the thing.
Like,
well, before we get into the thing, I would just like to say, the thing is almost ingenious because instead of building tension, it lets it lay dormant. Which makes it doesn't do it within the movie. You do it yourself.
Right.
It really puts the work on you. It's like, here, you're the audience, you do the work for me. But whereas a thing that comes to mind is the Final Destination 3 scene where they're at the drive-thru and the radio switches and the song plays like, there is someone watching behind you, turn around, look at me. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then they turn around and it's like the truck you could see without the driver coming.
Yeah.
So that's a buildup of tension within the film. I think I was talking, and let's just get right into the thing now that we're already talking so much about it. I didn't mean to offend Joey by this question, but I asked if almost the mundaneness of the scenes were purposeful, because there are scenes where they're doing very ordinary things, and even when it's heightened, like at the end when they set up the TNT, it goes for so long without anything else, and it's just visuals of these people setting up TNT that you don't expect anything. Mm-hmm. And it's not that they build up this tension by making suspenseful music. It's like almost like silent.
Silence, yeah. It keeps you... John Carpenter does a great thing of, just like letting the camera sit and letting the audience kind of sit in this moment of kind of unease until it gets to a point where you start to feel comfortable. And just at that point, something happens.
And it almost feels like you're in the reality of it. You're feeling the same way as the character. Mm-hmm. Because in horror movies, it almost feels heightened. Like in horror movies I watch, you feel like you're more afraid than the character because you have the dramatic irony of knowing what they don't know. Mm-hmm. The Thing is kind of crazy. Doesn't give you that dramatic irony.
No, because
at the end, I didn't know. I knew someone was going to come up behind someone, mm-hmm. but it was because I drew that own conclusion, not because the music was leading me to think that way. So, and almost it came to this magical point where Larry mm-hmm. gets like body snatched. And the Thing like shoves his tentacles in his mouth and then absorbs him. It was almost this beauteous thing of you were calm, but you thought like you were afraid, but you were calm because nothing was happening. You panicked because you saw it all happen all of a sudden, and he came up behind him. And then like you kind of settled in as he just kind of released like control because he was getting absorbed. But like as he stopped resisting, I felt the same way.
And I think that the fact that you said earlier how, like, the music doesn't lead you, because the music is simply just like a bass line practically. The main score is just bum, bum,
and then the high violins. I loved the score of this film.
It's fantastic.
That was the one of the jokes I was making to ease my own tension within the movie. That was the one serious comment.
Yeah, one of the most honest things
I was just like, this is amazing music.
Yeah.
And I hated it. And that's why it was so amazing. Mm-hmm. Because it made me it gave me such unease. Mm-hmm. But like, I was thinking of like the music when they see the spaceship. Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. But then again, let's talk about, okay, I've complimented it too much. I have to devil's advocate or else this wouldn't be fun.
Okay.
The people in that movie, they were scientists, and yet they were idiots.
No.
Let me walk you through. Okay, let's rebuttal. Let's quarrel. Let's quarrel right now about
please.
What I thought was stupid. So first of all, I thought was stupid. I thought the concept that you drugged and removed the two smartest people of the group immediately. The two people who were referred to as doctors of the entire group. One was morphined. The other was sent away where no one could see what would happen to them.
Mm-hmm. But this was at a point in the movie where having a doctor wasn't really necessary because we knew everything about this creature that we needed to know. What makes you think they were the two smartest just because they were the doctors?
They were the front, and they were brought with the other when they went.
That's true. When they went to go discover the
when spaceship. They went to go discover the past mission.
Oh yes,
they brought the doctor with.
Yeah.
They brought the doctor with them. These people, and they probably have the best grasp of medical science and things, and they're drugged. And it's even a point in the film where the guy goes, "You need me," and then the other person and someone else goes, "Yes, we need him," and they go, "I don't care, drug him."
Yeah, but when you're in that situation where this is the most, unusual suspect, and you have a doctor that's going to be, working on people and in rooms with people by themselves. I mean, I don't think I'd really want him around either. I think I'd feel safer if he was, kind of tied up. The two doctors, they're not necessary at this moment. I don't, because
I think they are. It's medicine that without the first doctor who gets sent away.
But he was trying to kill everybody. He was insane.
He was trying to kill everyone, which was the smartest choice. It was the only way to ensure that no one would harm the world. But it sacrificed a group of people, and some of them could have been innocent and not turned yet. But you also don't know if when they get out, if they're already contaminated.
Well, that's why, it practically works. Their blood system works. If only they didn't put Blair in that shed, which they didn't know the extent of the alien's abilities. I'm sure they didn't know that it was going to be able to break him out.
But presumably this disease can transform you without getting into your blood, right? Because it never specified that in the movie.
Well, no, it needs to attach onto you, and it needs to. Right?
But it could do so on the surface of your skin. And therefore, they could all be contaminated and leave being humans and get to human civilization as a thing.
They're not contaminated. This is not a disease.
It's cellular.
You're literally killed and turned into a clone, practically.
No, but each cell is its own alien being. It was specified in the movie.
They thought that. I don't know if that was...
I'm also pretty sure that's true based on what I've read of the remake. That it's cellular.
Right. Yeah, I think,
But to kill them all is the safest because they all are contaminated after even having just been with the dog.
But why would you want to...
Again, that wouldn't make for a good movie. I will argue that. Like, if they did what I suggested, this wouldn't be a thing. This wouldn't be a movie to complain about. But also, like, stupidity, like, using... And we have fought over this already. The amount of gasoline they use.
Okay, we never get, we never specify how much gasoline they actually have. So you're just assuming that they used all their gasoline, which that gasoline they had was very minimal. They have a helicopter, they have 2 tractors. You know how much gasoline? They have generators they need to power this place. I'm sure they have an abundance of gasoline.
But they still used 4 giant barrels of gasoline to light a mound of body. Just a mound. It was so overkill.
Well,
and then they drizzled a little on top with the small boxes. They're like, a little sprinkle of gasoline.
Yeah, it worked. It worked. That's what matters.
But isn't that a point? Okay, and maybe one of the reasons why I thought this was so stupid was having known the plot of, and when I say I know these movies, I will tell you all that I have not had the experience of watching them. These are Wikipedia articles that I read. But I'm almost 100% sure that the plot of the new movie involves them running out of gasoline. Or being possibly, how much gasoline is left for these flamethrowers.
Yeah, well, that started to happen in this one. Remember in the blood scene, he started running out of gas. Oh, yeah, you have to refill a flamethrower. Doesn't mean they don't have enough gas. You can't be like, yeah, you see what I mean, Joey?
Also, from the beginning, the dog is being shot at, and they are screaming in this guy's face. The guy is screaming, being like, blah, 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 blah. I'm speaking in Swedish. Norwegian. I'm speaking in Norwegian, blah, 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 blah. But if they're frantic, and then they're shooting at a dog, and then you go to the place where they were from, and it is desecrated. First of all, don't bring back the alien body you found with 2 faces molded together.
Yeah.
Second of all, maybe take another look at that dog.
You better be speechless. Yeah, okay. Listen, you're at an Antarctica research facility. You're probably not doing much work. If this comes to be that there is this crazed... First of all, at this point, they don't know it's an alien life form. They bring back this body, and they open it up, and they've discovered that it's all human organs. At this point, they don't understand that it's been assimilated, and it's all duplicated. It's not until that the dog, becomes an alien that they realize, uh-oh, we've made a mistake, and we've released this out. Also, when these Norwegians guys come up and shoot your friend in the leg, of course you're going to think that he's trying to hurt you guys. Or hunt this dog, and it'll stop at nothing to hunt this good old husky meat sack.
And again, I get the point of if my problems with the movie also make the movie. Like without it, it would be like, great, we killed the alien dog. No one's infected. Let's go home now.
Right. Also, we are kind of arguing, but you can have your own opinions. It doesn't matter.
Semantics
it's a movie.
Too. I did think it was
Subjective.
a great movie.
Cool. I'm glad.
So before we end, I have like a few more.
Okay.
We've talked about The Thing. We've mentioned a lot of movies on this podcast. If you have one recommendation for people to watch a movie that is not The Thing,
okay,
what would it be?
Honestly and true honesty, I think I would show people The Descent, possibly. That is a horror movie that I've showed many people, and every reaction is pretty much the same. Amazing jump scares, amazing character and character development, and then it's not a character study, but just amazing character interactions, amazing monsters, pretty great story. I think I would say that. Maybe even The Shining. That's a fantastic horror movie, but that might be a lot of pretty boring for some people. The Thing is so great. I'd probably say The Descent. If you want to see a really good horror movie, you want to be scared, you want to watch some interesting characters, do some non-dumb stuff, even though they do some dumb stuff in the movie. The Descent. The Descent is a great watch.
Give us a little summary. No spoilers, but...
Okay, so it's about this woman named Sarah who goes through this awful tragedy, and a year later, her and 5 of her friends go spelunking, which is cave diving, and something happens, and they end up in an unmarked cave, and they end up trapped in. So while finding their way out, they start to encounter these kind of Wendigo-style, cannibal, golem-esque monsters. And then it's just them trying to get out of this said cave.
I'll make sure to Wikipedia that one.
Okay. Yeah, watch the kill count on it.
Or watch the kill count on it. Yeah, totally, that one. Second to last question, but the final question of actual substance on the matter. If you were in my shoes and you had to ask yourself a question that I had not yet, what would you ask yourself?
I think I would ask myself, Joey, what is the one horror movie that you keep going back to that you can't stop thinking about because it's so good? And I would say, well, Harrison, this isn't actually like a scary movie, but Shaun of the Dead, which is a horror comedy about a 29-year-old TV salesman who kind of lives his life as a, mindless zombie. He gets thrown into a zombie apocalypse, and it's his journey into becoming an adult, and becoming an adult in his relationship with his best friend, actually having to leave his best friend behind in order to become a bigger person because his best friend is holding us back, and then learning to be one with himself, therefore he can be one with his girlfriend in relationship, and having to deal with loss of his mother and his flatmate and his best friend, and that's what's able to turn him into the person that he truly wants to be. And it's one of the funniest, most creative, exciting, truly visually stunning movies I've ever seen. And so even though it's not a movie that really engages with the fear and horror that most audiences want, I think it's one of the best zombie horror comedies ever made. So thank you, Harrison, for asking me that question. Definitely didn't lead it down a path of what I wanted to say.
You don't want to say anything about Texas? You're good?
I'll say this. Texas Chainsaw is a great post-Vietnam War movie, and it's pretty disturbing. It's one of the classics. It's the birth of the final girl. The birth of the death by sex, pretty much. Maybe that might be, well, Suspiria or Black Christmas. I can't remember which was first, but those both are final girl. Either way, it also deals with the meatpacking industry and just humans itself. Also, Leatherface is a very interesting character. It deals with cross-dressing and horror in the transgender community, which at the time wasn't really being highlighted. It still isn't really being highlighted now, but it's kind of interesting. It's a very interesting take. So I would say look into it. Look into Texas Chainsaw. It's very interesting movie.
So you should do, after watching this, you should add to your movie list The Descent.
Yes.
Texas Chainsaw.
Yes.
Get you that new age, that old age horror.
Yes.
Get you best of both worlds.
Best of both worlds. Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this podcast, I would just like to ask you, where can we find you? Plug any of your social medias. Tell people where to message you about how they like The Descent, how they like Texas Chainsaw themselves.
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Joey P. Cooper and on TikTok, my great TikTok at Joey P. Cooper. And those are my two main socials.
He's very funny.
Well, thanks.
But also bizarre.
Yeah, okay. We'll leave it at that. That's a good. Those are two great adjectives I think I would use. And you are creative and burning. I would say. Maybe not the latter, but you know what? Harrison, thank you for having me on your podcast. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you for being on.
Yeah, no. I had a lot of fun talking about horror movies, as you would say. It was a blast. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, on that note, I hope you sleep well tonight. I'll see you all next week.
Wow, what an ending. That was scary.